He was a king of concrete and glass, and she was the wife he discarded like a faulty blueprint. "You have no value." He sneered his $10,000 pen, signing the papers that left her with nothing but her name. He thought he had erased her from the ledger of society, a forgotten footnote in his glittering biography. What he didn't know was that in the quiet, shadowed world of forgotten art and reclusive billionaires, a different kind of value exists. He was about to watch the woman he called worthless become the most powerful person in a room he owned, all because of who was holding her hand. This is the story of Emma Vance, and the night her silence finally broke. The room was the color of bone. It was the 74th floor penthouse on Park Avenue, a place Emma Vance had once called home, but it had never been warm. It was a mausoleum of Italian marble, German steel, and cold, unfeeling glass. And seated across a 10-foot slab of polished obsidian that served as a desk was the man who owned it all, Noah William. "Just sign the last page, Emma," he said, not looking up from his phone. He was already scrolling through market reports. The divorce was just another transaction, a merger dissolving. Emma's hand was shaking. It wasn't the loss of the money or the penthouse or the access to a life that choked her. It was the casual indifference. 15 years of her life managing his chaotic homes, raising his public image, curating his collections, and sacrificing her own career as an art historian were being finalized with the same emotional weight as closing a lunch tab. "The settlement," she said, her voice quiet. Noah, it's nothing. My apartment in Brooklyn. That's it." Noah finally looked up. His eyes, the color of a winter sky, were empty of everything but annoyance. He was handsome in the sharp, predatory way of a hawk, a face that graced the cover of Forbes and the Wall Street Journal. He was Noah William, the real estate titan who built the new New York skyline. "Nothing," he scoffed, leaning back in his chair. "You're getting the apartment. It's paid for. What else did you expect? Half, what did you contribute? Emma, did you lay a single brick? Did you negotiate a single zoning deal? I built an empire. You hosted dinners." "I hosted dinners that secured your first billion-dollar partner." Emma said the words tasting like ash. "I found the Rauschenberg in that dusty gallery that you later sold for a 2,000% profit. I managed the charities that made you look like a saint." Noah stood up, a towering, bespoke-suited monument to his own success. He walked to the window, looking down on Central Park. "That was your job, Emma. The job of being Mrs. William. You were overhead, a necessary expense that frankly stopped providing a return." He turned. "Now I have Chloe. Chloe Sterling. She understands my world. She's an asset. She's on the 30 under 30 list. She has 10 million followers. She adds value." Emma felt the blood drain from her face. Chloe Sterling, the tech accessory heiress, all high-gloss polish and ruthless ambition. "And what am I?" Emma whispered, though she already knew the answer. Noah picked up his $10,000 Mont Blanc pen and tapped it against the divorce papers. "You are a 42-year-old woman with a useless master's degree in a dead field. You haven't earned an independent dollar in 15 years. You let yourself go. Your opinions are quaint. Without me, without my name, Emma." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a confidential, cruel whisper. "You have no value. You are a zero." Her breath hitched. A zero. The word echoed in the sterile, cavernous room. He had taken her youth, her expertise, her loyalty, and stamped a zero on her forehead. She picked up the pen. Her hand was steady now. The tremor was gone, replaced by an icy cold. She signed her name Emma Vance, not William. The loop of the V was a sharp, defiant victory. "You're wrong, Noah," she said, sliding the papers across the obsidian. "A zero isn't just nothing. In mathematics, it's a placeholder. It's the difference between 10 and a million. It's the beginning." He laughed. A short barking sound. "A placeholder. You're a ghost. In 6 months, no one will even remember your name." She stood, pulling her simple cloth coat around her. "You're right about one thing," she said, walking to the private elevator. "I'm not Mrs. William. But you seem to have forgotten who Emma Vance was before she met you." "And who was that?" he called after her, amused. "Nobody." The elevator doors whispered shut, reflecting his smirking face back at him. Emma leaned against the cool steel wall, closed her eyes, and let the first and last tear fall. The long descent from the 74th floor had begun. The Brooklyn apartment was small. Not charming New York small, but frustrating hitting your elbows small. It was a fifth-floor walk-up in Greenpoint with steam-clanging radiators and a view of a brick wall. This was the generous settlement Noah had provided a pre-war one-bedroom he'd bought on a whim in 2005 and forgotten he owned. For the first month, Emma was the ghost Noah had called her. She'd unpack her boxes of art history textbooks, their familiar spines the only comfort she had. The severance from her old life was brutal. The friends she had, other wives of other titans, had frozen her out. To them she was a contagion, a reminder that their own gilded positions were conditional. She applied for curatorial positions at the MoMA, the Guggenheim, and the Frick. The responses were polite, automated rejections. She was a woman out of time. She had a 15-year gap on her resume that was filled with private consulting and philanthropic management, the high society euphemisms for being a billionaire's wife. In a world that demanded a hustle, she had been parked in a garage. One rainy Tuesday, steeped in the bitter tea and stale pastry fog of depression, she forced herself out. She wandered aimlessly until she found herself in a dusty, overstuffed thrift shop, the kind that smelled of old paper and mothballs. She was running her fingers along a row of chipped porcelain figurines when she saw it. It was a painting propped up behind a broken floor lamp. It was small, maybe 12·16 inches dark, and caked in a century of grime. The frame was a monstrosity of chipped gold gesso. The tag, written in faded marker, said, $4,500, Old Dutch Lady. Emma stopped. Most people would have seen a murky, depressing portrait of a woman staring at a candle. Emma saw something else. She moved closer, her heart starting a strange, unfamiliar rhythm. The grime was thick, but through it she could see the chiaroscuro, the dramatic play of light and shadow. It was an interior scene. A woman, not just an old lady, but a scholar or an alchemist surrounded by books and globes. But it was the light. The way the candlelight seemed to live on the woman's cheek and cast a warm, translucent glow on her fingers. It was technique. It was mastery. This is impossible," she whispered. The brushwork was too fine. The composition was too sophisticated. It wasn't a copy. It felt alive. It reminded her of the Dutch golden age of the Feenschilders, the fine painters. It was reminiscent of Gerrit Douw, but softer, more intimate. She bought it. She used the last of her weekly cash allowance, her hands shaking for a different reason this time. Back in her apartment, she set up a small easel by her only good window. She didn't have a restoration lab. She had cotton swabs, distilled water, and a patience forged in 15 years of social warfare. For weeks she worked. She slept in 4-hour bursts, existing on coffee and adrenaline. With painstaking millimeter-by-millimeter care, the grime of ages receded. And a face emerged. The woman in the painting wasn't just a scholar. She was defiant. Her eyes met the viewer's with a startling intelligence. And in the corner, so small it was almost invisible, was a monogram. A simple, elegant JL. Emma's knees went weak. She stumbled back, knocking over her cup of cold coffee. "No," she breathed, scrambling for her textbooks. She ripped open Dutch masters of the 17th century. J.L. Judith Leister, a contemporary of Frans Hals, a master in her own right, celebrated in her time, and then almost completely erased from history. For centuries her work was misattributed to Hals or other men. She was a genius who had been dismissed, her value absorbed by the men around her. Emma looked from the textbook to the painting. It was her. It was her style. A lost Leister. A painting of an unknown female intellectual painted by a forgotten female master. A zero, Emma whispered, her hand tracing the JL on the canvas. a placeholder. She wasn't a ghost. She was a detective. She was a curator. She opened her laptop and, ignoring the rejection email from Sotheby's sitting in her inbox, started a new document. Provenance Research, The Alchemist's Daughter. She didn't just have a painting. She had a mission. She had a voice, and she was about to use it. While Emma was discovering a lost world in a layer of grime, Noah William was conquering the current one. His engagement to Chloe Sterling was the event of the season. It wasn't a romance, it was an alliance. The New York Post ran a full-page spread, Titan and Tech Princess to merge. William and Sterling, the new power couple. Their engagement photos taken on Noah's 200-foot yacht were aggressively glamorous. He looked smug. She looked transactional. Noah was also preparing for his crowning achievement, the William Foundation Gala. It was his annual charity spectacle, timed perfectly to coincide with the Met Gala season, ensuring maximum press. This year it was being held at the Met in the Temple of Dendur. The theme was The New Olympians, a subtle nod to himself. He sat in a conference room, his team of 20 fluttering around him. The catering by Jean-Georges, his assistant said. The floral arrangements are costing $200K. The celebrity host is confirmed. And... "What about the auction?" Noah snapped. "The auction is the centerpiece. It's what gets the real donors to open their wallets." "We have the usual," his VP of PR said. "A week on St. Bart's, a custom Patek Philippe, a walk-on role in that new Marvel movie." "Trinkets," Noah spat. "I want something no one else has. I want something that says William is synonymous with priceless. Find me a masterpiece." His team looked terrified. "Noah," the VP said carefully. "A masterpiece like an old master. Sotheby's just sold a Rubens for $40 million. We can't just find one." "Then make one," he roared. "I don't care how. I want this gala to be the night everyone remembers. I want it to eclipse the Met Gala itself." He lowered his voice. "I want a headline that doesn't mention my divorce." His team scattered, scrambling to achieve the impossible. Noah checked his watch. He had a fitting for his Tom Ford suit, then a dinner with a senator. He hadn't thought of Emma Vance in weeks. Across the river, Emma was hitting a different kind of wall. She had a masterpiece, but the art world is a fortress. You can't just walk into Christie's with a painting from a thrift store and claim it's a Leicester. She'd sent high-resolution photos to a few prominent art historians and had been met with silence, or worse, dismissive replies. "Ms. Vance, while your enthusiasm is admirable, the canon of Leicester is well established. This is most likely a competent 19th century copy." They saw her name, Emma Vance, saw no institutional affiliation, and dismissed her. She was a nobody. She was a zero. She needed an advocate, a name they couldn't ignore. There was one name, a legend in the field of 17th century Dutch art. A man so revered, so notoriously reclusive and academic that his word could move mountains. Dr. Eris William. He was a professor emeritus at Yale, the author of the definitive text on the subject. And in a twist of acidic irony, he was Noah Williams' uncle. Emma had met him only twice. Eris was the black sheep of the William family, the intellectual who had turned his back on the family's brutal real estate business to live a life of the mind. Noah despised him, calling him the dusty old fool who chose books over billions. Emma found his email address through the university archives. She wrote a careful, respectful, and clinically detailed email attaching her photographs and her initial research. She didn't mention Noah, she didn't mention her divorce. She signed it, Emma Vance, Independent Researcher. She expected no reply. It came 3 hours later. It was one line. "Call my office, tomorrow, 9 a.m. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold the phone the next morning. "Dr. William, Ms. Vance." His voice was dry like old parchment. "I looked at your photos. I am intrigued. Your analysis of the brushwork on the lace collar is astute. Most amateurs would miss that. You believe it's Leicester." I am certain of it, sir. The monogram, the handling of the light on the globe, the psychological depth of the subject, it's all her. It's a lost piece from her late period after 1640. There was a long silence. Yes, that's what I thought too. Emma almost wept. But, he continued, certainty is not proof. You need X-ray fluorescence. You need pigment analysis. You need to trace the provenance. This costs money, a great deal of money, money I do not have. I know, Emma said, her hopes sinking. I thought if you believed me. Belief is for church, Ms. Vance. We are in the business of facts. I know who you are. I know you were married to my nephew. I am sorry for that. He is a barbarian, a modern Visigoth. Yes, Emma managed. He and his ilk, Aris continued. They see art as a stock certificate, an asset. They don't see the soul, this painting. If it is what you say it is, it has a soul. It must be protected from men like him. He sighed. I cannot fund this, but I know one man who can. He is more legend than man, but he respects my opinion. He is the only person on earth I would trust with this. His name is Julian Alistair Blackwell. Emma's blood ran cold. Julian Alistair Blackwell. He wasn't just a billionaire. He was a myth, a tech visionary who had cashed out in his 30s to pursue everything. He owned islands, yes, but he also owned the world's most significant private collection of scientific manuscripts. He funded deep-sea exploration and space elevators. He never gave interviews, was rarely photographed, and was rumored to be a genius with a deep, abiding passion for the lost and forgotten. Mr. Blackwell, Emma stammered. He wouldn't even see me. He will, Eris said, because I am going to call him, and I am going to tell him that a woman my nephew called worthless has found a painting that could rewrite history. That, Eris chuckled dryly, is the kind of story Julian lives for. A week later, Emma was standing in a place that technically didn't exist. It was an unmarked, climate-controlled warehouse in the Bronx known to only a handful of people as the Archive. This was Julian Alistair Blackwell's personal restoration lab, a place with more advanced technology than the Getty and the Rijksmuseum combined. Emma was holding The Alchemist's Daughter in her gloved hands. She had been instructed to come alone. The door hissed open and a man walked in. He was not what she expected. He wasn't old and reclusive. He was perhaps 50, tall with salt and pepper hair, and the arresting, intelligent eyes of a man who is perpetually listening. He wore a simple black cashmere sweater and jeans. He looked more like a philosophy professor than a multi-billionaire. Ms. Vance, he said. His voice was quiet with a faint British accent. I am Julian Blackwell. He didn't offer to shake her hand, seeing it was occupied with the painting. He simply gestured to a high-tech easel. Please. Emma placed the painting. Julian circled it, not speaking for a full 5 minutes. Emma felt like a student defending her dissertation to a panel of one. Eris tells me you found this in a thrift shop, he said, still studying the canvas. Yes, in Greenpoint. It was the light on the cheek. It called to me. The light on the cheek. Julian repeated, a small smile touching his lips. Most people would say the frame or the price. He leaned closer. And the monogram, J.L. Judith Leister, Emma said, her voice gaining strength. Her late period. She was experimenting with more pronounced chiaroscuro, moving away from the brighter palettes of her Hall's-influenced work. This subject, a female scholar, is also consistent with her known personal inventory at the time of her death. It's listed as a woman of letters by candlelight. Julian turned to her. His gaze was intense but not unkind. It was appraising. You're not just a fan, Ms. Vance. You're a scholar. I was, Emma said. A long time ago, before I became an accessory. Nothing is ever a long time ago with art, Julian said. Or with people. We just get covered in grime." He gestured to his chief restorer, a woman in a lab coat. "Let's put her under the XRF." For the next 8 hours, Emma and Julian watched. They watched as the X-ray fluorescence scanner analyzed the pigment composition layer by layer without touching the canvas. "The lead tin yellow," the restorer murmured, looking at her screen. "It's consistent. The lack of synthetic blues. The composition of the lead white. It's all period correct for the 1640s. Then came the infrared reflectography penetrating the paint to see the underdrawing. There, clear as day, was the artist's first sketch, a faster, more energetic drawing with changes to the position of the globe. And the signature. Not just the monogram, but a full Judith Leister signature painted over by the artist herself when she added the monogram. Emma covered her mouth, tears welling. It was real. She had done it. "Congratulations, Ms. Vance," Julian said, his voice soft. "You've just rediscovered a masterpiece. She's worth, at a conservative auction estimate, $30 to $40 million. Emma sat down hard. 40 million. Noah's dismissal echoed in her head. A zero. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Now?" Julian said, "We give her a voice. This painting doesn't belong in a private vault. It belongs to the world. It needs to be unveiled. And you are the one who will unveil it. Me, you. We will loan it on its debut to a major museum. It will be the centerpiece of an event. And you, Ms. Vance, will be the one to tell her story. The story of the painting and the story of the artist who was erased." He paused, a calculated look in his eye. "In fact, I know the perfect event. A bit gaudy for my tastes, but it draws the right crowd. And it's one where the press will be particularly interested in a story of hidden value. The William Foundation Gala." Emma's blood turned to ice. "Noah's Gala at the Met." "The very one," Julian said. "I am on the board of the Met and a primary underwriter of the event, much to Mr. Williams' annoyance. He's been begging me for a centerpiece for his auction. I think we've just found it. The museum will host the unveiling, and the auction will be for a naming rights donation. The highest bidder gets their name on the plaque as the patron who brought it to the museum. The money goes to the Met's acquisition fund for female artists." "He'll never allow it," Emma said. "Not if it's from me." "He won't know." Julian smiled. "The painting is being loaned by a private European collector. You will be listed as the guest curator and discoverer. He won't see the program until the night of the event. By then he'll be on stage trapped by his own ego." This was terrifying. It was brilliant. It was war fought not with lawyers but with provenance. "But Noah," Emma started, "he'll try to stop me. He'll humiliate me." Julian Alistair Blackwell looked at her, and for the first time she saw the steel beneath the cashmere. "He can try," he said, "but he's a man who values objects. He's about to come up against two people who value history. He doesn't stand a chance." The 2 weeks leading up to the gala were a blur of high-stakes preparation and covert warfare. Noah William was ecstatic. He had his masterpiece. A private European collector, Julian Blackwell's shell company, had agreed to unveil a lost 17th-century painting at his gala. He was insufferable. "A lost masterpiece," he bellowed on a conference call. "It's going to make my gala legendary. The Times is doing an exclusive. Vogue is covering the unveiling." "Noah," his PR head said timidly, "the collector is also insisting that the art historian who discovered and authenticated the piece be the one to present it. Ms. Emma Vance." The name dropped into the room like a bomb. There was a dead, chilling silence on the line. "What?" Noah said, his voice dangerously low. "Did you just say Emma Vance? She's listed as the guest curator." Noah hung up the phone. He didn't yell. He didn't throw anything. He went very, very still. "Emma," His Emma. The zero. The ghost. He saw the entire play in an instant. This was a humiliation. She had conspired with someone, that dusty old fool heiress, probably to ambush him at his own event. He buzzed his legal team. "I want an injunction. Now. I want you to file a claim that any art discovered by Emma Vance during our marriage is marital property. That painting is mine." His lawyer, a shark named Harrison, paused. "Noah, that's a long shot. She found it after the divorce, and it was in a thrift shop." "I don't care," Noah roared. "Leak it. I want a story in the Post tomorrow. William's ex-wife sued for stealing priceless art. I want her discredited. I want her ruined. I want her portrayed as a vindictive, thieving liar. I want her to be a laughingstock before she even sets foot in that museum." The next day the headline hit: "William's thief ex-wife sued for $40 million over thrift store masterpiece." The story was brutal. It painted Emma as a grifter who, with the help of a sugar daddy billionaire they didn't dare name Blackwell, but the implication was clear, had fabricated a story to extort her ex-husband. Emma woke up to her phone exploding. She read the article and felt the floor drop out. Her small apartment felt like a cage. They were painting her as a whore and a thief. Noah wasn't just trying to win, he was trying to annihilate her. She was about to call Julian and back out to tell him to sell the painting and let her disappear when her doorbell rang. It was a courier. He handed her a large flat velvet box and a simple handwritten note. The box contained a dress. It wasn't a flashy, glittery revenge dress. It was a deep, emerald green velvet gown by a designer she didn't recognize, simple, elegant, and powerful. It was the color of old money and deep forests. The note was on Julian Blackwell's personal stationery. "Emma, barbarians always use the crudest weapons. They shout, they lie, they break things. They know no other way. Your weapon is the truth. It is quiet, but it is made of iron. Do not read the news. Do not answer your phone. Put on the dress. I will see you tonight." Jay tucked into the box was a second smaller box. Inside, on a bed of silk, was a Cartier brooch from the 1920s. It was a phoenix, its wings rendered in platinum and diamonds. Emma closed her eyes. He was right. Noah had drawn his sword, but she was the one holding the masterpiece. She put on the dress. She pinned the phoenix to her shoulder. And for the first time in her life, she felt truly, terrifyingly valuable. The Temple of Dender at the Metropolitan Museum of Art was not a room. It was an event horizon. The ancient sandstone temple, a gift from Egypt, was suspended in a vast glass-walled chamber. Tonight it was lit in hues of deep sapphire and shimmering gold, making the entire structure appear to float on the black mirror-like surface of the reflecting pool. The air thrummed with the sound of 1,000 conversations, the clinking of champagne flutes, and the distant, elegant strains of a string quartet. This was Noah Williams' new Olympus, and he was its Zeus. He stood near the entrance, a shark in a flawless Tom Ford tuxedo, his arm possessively around Chloe Sterling. She was a vision in liquid gold, a dress so tight it looked poured on her every angle, designed to catch the light and the camera flashes. They were the center of the room's gravity. "Mr. William? Mr. William?" A reporter from the New York Post, the same paper that had run his hatchet job, shoved a microphone toward him. "Your reaction to the morning's lawsuit, the one claiming your ex-wife is a thief." Noah gave a theatrical, pained sigh, a performance of practiced regret. "It's a sad, sad situation," he said, his voice carrying. Several nearby conversations quieted, tuning in. "I wish Emma well. I truly do. But this is a desperate measure. My foundation." He gestured broadly. "We are about philanthropy, about truth. We cannot be associated with this kind of deception." He was planting the dagger, twisting it in a room full of the most powerful people in New York. He was branding her a liar before she even arrived. "But will the painting still be unveiled?" a Vogue editor asked. "The art is the art," Noah said with a dismissive wave. The museum is handling it. We are here. He squeezed Chloe's waist to celebrate the children. Not unfortunate distractions. He smiled a mask of confident benevolence. He had won. He had defined her. She wouldn't dare show her face. If she did, she'd be a pariah, a sad, vindictive ghost in a room full of glittering gods. And then the room changed. It wasn't a sudden hush. It was a slow, rolling wave of silence that began at the entrance and moved through the crowd like a social tsunami. Conversations faltered. Heads turned. The string quartet seemed to falter, the first violinist's bow skittering for a second. Noah turned, annoyed by the shift in attention, his smile freezing. Emma Vance had arrived. She was not the mousy beige woman he had discarded. The woman standing at the archway wore a gown of deep emerald green velvet. It was not a dress that screamed for attention. It was a dress that commanded it. It absorbed the light of the room, suggesting depth and old-world power. Her hair was pulled back in a simple, severe chignon that highlighted the sharp, beautiful bones of her face. Her only adornment was pinned to her shoulder, a 1920s Cartier brooch of a phoenix, its wings rendered in platinum and diamonds, poised for flight. She looked, as one gossip columnist would later write, less like a cast-off and more like a queen who had just won a war. But it wasn't just Emma that had silenced the room. It was the man at her side. He was tall, with salt and pepper hair, wearing a simple, exquisitely cut black tuxedo. He was not on magazine covers. He was not on Instagram. He was, in fact, a man who hadn't been willingly photographed at a public event in almost a decade. It was Julian Alistair Blackwell. If Noah William was a king, Julian Blackwell was the man who owned the banks, the governments, and the air itself. He was the ghost of Silicon Valley, the myth of global finance, the collector who outbid museums. His presence here was not a social appearance. It was a statement. The cameras didn't just flash, they exploded. The press, abandoning Noah and Chloe in an instant, surged forward, a wall of shouting. "Mr. Blackwell! Mr. Blackwell! Are you here with Ms. Vance? Julian! What about the lawsuit? Who are you wearing?" Noah Williams' blood ran cold. His wine glass stopped halfway to his lips. He understood. This wasn't heiress. This wasn't some minor league revenge. This was a strategic nuclear strike. He had brought a knife to a war against a man who owned the entire arsenal. Chloe Sterling, a perfect barometer of power, saw it instantly. Her smile faltered. Her hand on Noah's arm suddenly felt less like an embrace and more like a shackle. Her eyes darted from Blackwell to Noah, and in that 1-second appraisal, Noah saw his value plummet. Julian ignored the press. His hand rested lightly, professionally, on the small of Emma's back. He was a silent shield, his very presence an impenetrable defense. He guided her through the throng, which parted for him as if he were a biblical figure. He didn't stop to talk to anyone. He walked her directly to the front row of seats reserved for the museum's primary patrons, a section even Noah didn't sit in. Noah, regaining a fraction of his composure, his face pale with rage, stormed over. He was still the host. This was his room. "Julian," he said, his voice a tight, strangled facsimile of warmth. "What a surprise. I didn't know you were coming." "I'm on the board, Noah," Julian said coolly, his voice quiet but carrying. He was helping Emma to her seat. "And you brought her?" Noah sneered, unable to help himself, gesturing at Emma as if she were a piece of contaminated luggage. "Given the news this morning, that's a bold move. Tainting the gala. The press is having a field day." Before Emma could even flinch, Julian stepped slightly in front of her, a subtle protective maneuver. He turned his full, calm attention to Noah. "Tainting," Julian said. "You mean the fictional story your lawyers leaked to the Post at 3 a.m.? A story, I might add, that my legal team, Ms. Vance's new legal team, is classifying as defamation per se." Noah's face went from pale to white. "We filed a countersuit this afternoon for $200 million in damages for defamation and frivolous litigation." Julian continued, his voice as pleasant as if ordering tea. A copy was served to your security detail at the door tonight. I believe he's holding it for you." Noah was speechless. He was trapped. He was on his own stage under the lights and he had just been checkmated. "Now if you'll excuse us," Julian said, "we're here to celebrate a work of art, something you of all people should appreciate the value of." He took his seat beside Emma. Noah was left standing in the aisle, his face a mask of apoplectic, impotent rage. The auction began. It was a blur of the usual trinkets. The St. Bart's Vacation, the custom Patek Philippe. Then the main event. The lights in the great hall dimmed, leaving only the sapphire light on the temple and a single brilliant white spotlight on the stage. "And now," the auctioneer boomed his voice, echoing off the ancient stone, "the moment we've been waiting for, a lost masterpiece, unveiled tonight for the first time in 300 years. The Alchemist's Daughter, by Judith Leister. And to tell us her story, please welcome the brilliant scholar who discovered her, Ms. Emma Vance." There was a spattering of polite, confused applause. Emma stood. Julian gave her arm a small, encouraging squeeze. She walked onto the stage, her emerald dress a beacon in the spotlight. She stood at the podium, her heart hammering against her ribs. The painting was on an easel beside her, shrouded in a black velvet cloth. She looked out. Hundreds of eyes. In the front row, Noah was staring at her with pure, unadulterated hatred. She took a breath, and she began to speak. "Good evening," she said, her voice clear and strong, amplified by the microphone. It didn't tremble. "We are here to meet a ghost. The ghost of a genius." She didn't talk about the thrift store. She didn't talk about her divorce. She talked about Judith Leister. She told the story of a woman who was a master of the Dutch Golden Age, a member of the Painters Guild, a contemporary of Frans Hals. A woman who, after her death, was erased. For centuries, Emma said, her work was stolen. Her signatures were painted over. Her genius was attributed to the men around her. The world decided she had no value. They were told she was a zero. History made her a zero. Her name, her legacy was absorbed by those who had more power. She glanced at Noah. He was rigid. "We are often told," she continued, "that value is determined by the market, by the signature, by what men in boardrooms decide. But value, true value, is intrinsic. It is the light on a cheek. It is the truth in an artist's eye. This painting didn't become a masterpiece tonight. It has been one for 3 centuries, waiting for someone to look." She walked over and with one smooth, definitive pull removed the cloth. A collective audible gasp went through the room. The painting was magnificent. It was not a grand, sprawling canvas, but an intimate, powerful one. The light from the single painted candle seemed to glow with an inner fire, illuminating the defiant, intelligent face of the female scholar. It was a mirror of Emma. The auction for the naming rights began. "We start the bidding at $5 million, the auctioneer cried. A paddle went up. 5 million, 6 million, 8 million. Noah, seeing the room's excitement, saw his final chance. He couldn't let her win. He couldn't let her have this moment. He had to own this. He would buy the naming rights. He would put his name on her discovery. He would possess it, control it, and erase her from her own story one last time. 10 million, he shouted. The room quieted. The bidding slowed. 12 million, a rival developer at the back called out. 14 million, Noah shot back. 15, said the rival. 20 million, Noah roared, standing up. His face was red. He was glaring at Emma, a vein throbbing in his temple. This wasn't an auction. It was an execution. The room was dead silent. The rival developer shook his head and lowered his paddle. $20 million from our host Noah William, the auctioneer said, his eyes wide. A stunning bid. Do I hear 21 going once, going twice? Noah smiled. A sickly, triumphant smile. He had won. He would crush her with his money. $25 million. The voice was not a roar. It was quiet, calm, and amplified by the microphone at the front table. Julian Alistair Blackwell had raised his paddle almost casually. The room exploded. It wasn't just a bid. It was a judgment. Noah Williams' face crumpled. He looked like he'd been physically struck. He couldn't go to $26 million. He didn't have $26 million in liquid cash. He was leveraged to the hilt, a fact he'd bragged about. He was beaten. He was exposed. He sat down hard. "Sold!" the auctioneer cried, slamming his gavel. "For $25 million to Mr. Julian Alistair Blackwell." The applause was deafening. Emma on stage covered her mouth, tears of sheer, unadulterated relief streaming down her face. As the lights came up, the press swarmed the front table, a chaotic scrum of cameras and microphones. "Mr. Blackwell! Mr. Blackwell! Why this painting? Why such an aggressive bid?" Noah was frozen, a statue of his own failure. Chloe, in a move of pure, ruthless self-preservation, had already stood up and was animatedly talking to a young hedge funder, her back to Noah. Julian Alistair Blackwell stood. He didn't look at the reporters. He walked past them. He walked past the stage. He walked directly to where Emma was standing, still trembling from the shock and the applause. The cameras followed. The entire gala, all the hundreds of powerful guests, watched. He walked straight up to Emma Vance. He didn't speak. He simply smiled, a warm, genuine smile of profound respect. And in front of everyone, in front of the cameras, the elite of New York and the broken, staring shell of her ex-husband, Julian Alistair Blackwell, reached out and took her hand. He didn't shake it. He didn't kiss it. He just held it. He held it firmly, proudly, and raised it slightly as if they were about to take a bow. A reporter, sensing the real story, shoved a microphone in his face. "Mr. Blackwell, a $25 million statement." Julian finally spoke. His voice carried in the sudden hush. He never looked away from Emma. "I didn't buy a painting," Julian said. "The painting is a gift to the Met, as it should be. I simply made a donation to ensure that the plaque reads, 'Discovered and curated by Emma Vance.'" He then turned, still holding her hand, to face Noah. His voice was not angry. It was cold, clear, and final. "Value isn't what you can buy, Noah," he said. "It's what you can see. And you," he turned his gaze back to Emma, his eyes softening, "are the most valuable person in this room." He squeezed her hand. The flashes were so bright they were white, a supernova capturing the single definitive image of the night. Noah William, pale and defeated, a ghost in his own temple. And Emma Vance, the zero, holding the hand of the only man who mattered, her face lit by the glow of a masterpiece. The aftermath of the gala was not a slow fade, it was a detonation. The moment Julian Alistair Blackwell made his $25 million statement, the night was over. Noah William, who had entered as Zeus, was left a ghost at his own feast. He didn't leave. He was deserted. The press, having captured the defining images of his humiliation and Emma's triumph, scrambled for the exits, racing to file their stories. Chloe Sterling, in a move of such ruthless, beautiful precision it would be studied by socialites for years, was seen leaving in a black Maybach, the one belonging to the young hedge funder she had been charming. Her departure was a public execution. Noah was left alone, standing under the gaze of the silent ancient temple, a man out of time. Emma woke the next morning in her small Brooklyn apartment, the sound of steam hissing through the radiator. For a moment she thought it was all a dream, the emerald dress, the blinding lights, the solid, reassuring pressure of Julian's hand. Then she saw her phone. It was a solid, vibrating brick of notifications, and when she opened her laptop, the world had been rewritten. The New York Times style section had cleared its front page. The lead photo was not of the painting. It was a full-color half-page image of the exact moment Julian took her hand. His gaze was on her. Hers was on the audience, a single tear of victory on her cheek. The headline, "The Curator's Eye, How Emma Vance and a Lost Masterpiece Stole the Night." The article eviscerated Noah not with insults but with facts, praising Emma's scholarship and Julian's pointed patronage. The Wall Street Journal was even more brutal. It was a front-page business story: Blackwell snubs, William in $25 million. Auction. Market correction. The piece was a clinical dissection. It questioned Noah Williams' liquidity, juxtaposing his $20 bid against Blackwell's effortless $25. It then, in a devastating paragraph, mentioned the $200 million defamation countersuit filed by Ms. Vance's new legal team. The subtext was clear: William was a brawler who had picked a fight with a god, and he was dangerously over-leveraged. For Noah William, the dominoes fell with catastrophic speed. First, the social. The new Olympians gala was now a punchline. He was a joke. By noon, 2 of his most prominent board members had formally resigned from his foundation, citing a need to protect our own philanthropic reputations. The invitations to the Hamptons summer circuit, the ones that defined his entire social calendar, silently evaporated. Second, the personal. Chloe Sterling's publicist released a statement at 10 a.m. Ms. Sterling and Mr. William have amicably parted ways. Ms. Sterling is refocusing on her brand and wishes Mr. William the best in his numerous and complex legal battles. It was a masterpiece of polite assassination. Third and most catastrophic was the financial. Julian's $200 million lawsuit was a guillotine freezing Noah's credit lines, but it was Chloe who delivered the killing blow. Furious at the public humiliation and the damage to her own brand, she made an anonymous and very detailed call to the SEC. She told them everything he had bragged about in post-merger confidence: the back-channel zoning deal for the new Hudson Yards Tower, the specific dates, the specific alderman. It was a perfect gift-wrapped felony. 2 months later, Noah William was indicted by a federal grand jury. The empire of glass and concrete built on hubris and debt began to crumble. Emma, however, was building. Her relationship with Julian wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was something rarer and more powerful. It was a partnership of the mind. They met in libraries and museums and in the quiet of his archive. He was her patron, her friend, and her greatest advocate. He had insisted she take the full curatorial and finder's commission on the Leicesters' valuation, a sum that made her independently wealthy. But she didn't buy a penthouse on Park Avenue. With that money and a significant seed endowment from Julian's own foundation, she founded the Vance Foundation. Its sole purpose to find, restore, and promote the lost work of female and minority artists, the zeros of history. She leased a restored pre-war warehouse in Brooklyn, not far from the thrift shop where her new life began. It wasn't a sterile office. It was a state-of-the-art conservation lab, a library and a gallery. It was a place of creation, not just acquisition. The final scene takes place 1 year later. Emma is on the main stage at the TED conference in Vancouver. The room is dark, the audience a sea of thousands. She is vibrant, wearing a simple, sharp red dress. The only jewelry she wears is the diamond phoenix pinned to her shoulder. "We are taught," she says to the rapt audience, her voice clear and resonant, "to accept the value others place on us. A grade, a salary, a title, or a dismissal." In the front row, Julian Blackwell watches, his arms crossed, a profound, quiet admiration on his face. "I was told by a man of considerable power that I was a zero," she continues. "He meant it as an insult. He meant I was nothing. But he was a barbarian and his math was flawed." A quiet laugh ripples through the room. "A zero is not nothing. It is a beginning. It is the empty space from which all things are created. It is the placeholder that turns 10 into 10 million. The worthless painting by the forgotten artist, the discarded wife. They are not valueless. They are simply waiting. They are the zeros holding the space for the value that is to come." Miles away in a cramped, fluorescent-lit lawyer's office, Noah William watches the same TED Talk streaming on a laptop. He is out on bail, his assets frozen. His Tom Ford suits are gone, replaced by a rumpled dress shirt. The king of concrete is in a concrete box, and the laptop screen is his only window to the world he lost. Emma smiles, the stage lights catching the fire in the diamond phoenix. "Your value is not determined by who claims you," she concludes, her voice ringing with the force of an unshakable truth. "It is determined by what you claim for yourself. Look in the grime. Find the masterpiece. and show it to the world. The audience rises to its feet, a thunderous, rolling ovation for the woman who had been a zero and who was now infinitely everything. The story of Emma Vance isn't just about revenge. It's about intrinsic value. It's about the fact that you are worthy, even when someone tries to write you off and stamp a zero on your life. Noah Williams saw value only in what he could own, but Julian Blackwell saw value in what someone knew. What did you think of Noah's spectacular downfall? Was Chloe's twist the ultimate justice, or just self-preservation? If you believe in the power of second chances and the sweet, sweet sound of karma, let me know your favorite part of this story in the comments below. And if you loved this, please don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear this story, and most importantly, subscribe to this channel for more stories of dramatic revenge and comeback. Who do you want to see get their comeback story next? Let me know.